Let's call this meeting to order. This is the Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, November 16th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Lauren, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Harris is absent. Mr. Talbert?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Burlingame?
Here. Old business. Review, discussion, recommendation of ordinances, reviewing of taxing districts for future developments. All right, gentlemen. So I've got some information that was provided to me. And in this, it's an ordinance that was written for taxing districts, specifically to development. And this particular one was written by Ascension. And it's in place. You have the actual ordinance. In order to do this, you have to basically go to the state legislature and ask for these things to be put into place. So this was, if you look at it, what was written by the state, by the representatives in order to enact this, then their actual ordinance. I don't know if there's any things on these things we'd like to, obviously we have to change a few things, but I had a few questions. Mr. Murphy, I appreciate you coming tonight, my friend. He's our resident expert on this, I guess. He was gracious enough to come here and to speak to us on it. So I guess my question is, my first one would be, in order to do this, by reading this information, they did it in a way.
Hit the
Did you
button.
put a battery in that one?
Yeah.
It just takes a while to boot
It just
up.
got to boot up.
Give it a second. We'll hold off.
The red light was on down here, it's just not up here.
Okay, so what does the screen say?
It says so.
There it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, you good.
Forgive us,
better?
we got new microphone systems.
Gotcha.
And from what I was told by looking at this at first glance, Ascension is giving the developers the option, essentially saying, hey, if you do not build this development to where it's a tax district, you can still build it, but everything would be private, correct?
Correct.
Now, is that, to your knowledge, is that necessary, or is it in order to become?
I don't know that answer. So,
Okay.
So this ordinance was directly written for basically public or private infrastructure within the right of way of developments. So what they've done is, just like I said, they gave them the option. So you don't have to do a taxing district. However, they're not going to be responsible for anything inside of that development at all. We've only had, my knowledge, one developer opt out, and that's because they didn't really understand what was going on. But every other developer has came in and wanted the taxing district. If you have this in place and you have a single landowner, that landowner can petition, just like if you have a vote of the people of a certain area, that landowner can petition to the governing body, the council, to make a taxing district, so there'll be an extra millage on that district.
Understood. And just to clarify for anyone who's watching this now or at a later date, this is for our for future development.
Correct.
And the purpose behind this, in my mind, and I believe the council's mind, would be this will allow extra revenue in order to apply to that district on for drainage. I mean, in their case, I think they were using it for roads too, but to where they can independently add money in to maintain their area, to not be such a heavy burden on the parish or the taxpayers for the road overlay fund and everything like that. I don't think it's meant to take care of everything forever, but it's more of a if the roads in the future, when those roads need to be overlaid, there will be a substantial amount of money in there for the roads or the drainage. If they need to have their retention pond cleaned or dredged or something like this, the money should be there in place to pay to cover that, and it would be wholly come out of the residents of that particular development.
In this particular case, the only thing that's covered is within the public right-of-way. There is no detention pond or anything like that. It is
we can-
only for
we look
drainage.
at that.
And this,
Yep.
in Ascension, the way it's written.
Gotcha.
The way it's written is, it's only for the infrastructure within those proposed right-of-ways. Road, curb, drainage, and at the time, there's even some sewer, which they pulled it out, electric lights, things like that, anything dealing with that right-of-way.
Understood.
So when they started figuring out basically what that cost would be, as you can see here, they got an example of a development where they talked about, crack seal and repair, rejuvenation of texture. They even have some of them where they ask us how many lights it is and things like that. So they kind of calculate up what they think that cost will be over a 20-year
Over time,
period.
yeah.
And that's how they get their millage for
Understood.
that time. So
Right here.
with that being said, the thing is specifically, what does the council want to do? What kind of maintenance, and that kind of stuff, so as part of the ordinance where y'all can help come up with what those fees and what that millage should be on those individual lots.
And one thing, Tracy, is that inside of
Bless you.
development, mainly the people living in there are who's doing the damage to drainage, to roads, to lighting, whatever. So instead of using the road fund as a whole to fix that road in the future, the people that use the road,
Sure.
would be the benefit of that they keep their road up nice too. And, it leaves more money in the road fund to fix the roads that we all travel on every day.
Yes.
And that's what the key to that, to me, is.
Well, to me, I was thinking addressing it more for drainage. We could look at the cost analysis for the roads too. But inevitably, I know they didn't put drainage in here, but that's kind of what I was looking toward, more maintenance of the ponds.
This goes back to their goals, and y'all have
Yeah,
different
I think where
goals.
we
That's why I
can
wanted
do,
to
so
that's
that's
why I
what
wanted
I'm
to
saying,
highlight
it's a
that.
framework for us where we can say, look, I'm not necessarily worried so much about
This
the
or that,
electrical,
yeah.
where I am more the drainage and possibly the roads too, if you look at it in terms like that. It doesn't necessarily have to pay for the entire
Right, and
road.
that
but-
would be the thing, yeah. You wouldn't have to put 10 mills on them or something like
No,
that.
no,
You may
no.
want to put 2 or 3, and
Well, yes.
we'll have to look in, like this sample shows, on 20 years, it would take this much. How many times would the road have to be overlaid in 20 years?
They're showing once is what they're showing.
Yes.
Well, they showing also crack, they have.
I mean, they're doing
they have a
maintenance, they're doing
maintenance,
maintenance on
yeah,
it,
yeah.
but they overlay it at the end of 20 years, and there's still a $79,000 balance at the end of the deal when they get done.
Now, the thing, if we looking at drainage is, we're looking at, some of the things that y'all were talking about before, making the detention ponds their own tracks.
Yep.
Where no lots can go into the ponds, or and they have a maintenance servitude on the side. If y'all want to enact this ordinance, those kind of things would have to be done, because you're not gonna go do maintenance on private property.
Right.
Yes.
So that'd have to be dedicated. The thing with that also does that mean that, grass cutting, when maintenance, what it is encompassed, as part of that maintenance program, and then that needs to be included in the cost. I mean,
We
you're looking at
could,
the villages and so
make it
forth.
whatever we think would be the right thing for Livingston Parish.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, but the key to that also is making sure that those areas, if we're gonna do that, is make them tracks, just like y'all had talked about in
Yes.
previous Zooms, meetings and so forth, or if that's what y'all's desire is. So
Well-
that's the other thing.
We just needed a start to know where
Correct,
to
and that's
go.
what-
Well, and I also like the idea of doing a separate track, because then you don't get into, fences being built in the area where, yes,
Agreed.
I own that land, but they don't, some people don't understand that you can't put a fence there because it's a
You got
servitude.
public money on private property. There should
Yes.
be public money on public property.
So you get access to it, the lands, but there's got to be maintenance of that property. It's going to have to be mowed and maintained,
Yeah,
so, which to me is a small
yeah.
thing to, especially if you're collecting
Small
some
price
money,
to
small
pay,
price to pay.
to make
be able-
sure that we're able to do the rest of it.
to where you can
Yeah,
access
agreed.
it, keep it clean, along those lines. So anyway,
This is a good start. We can look over this and work on it.
The other thing, if y'all are gonna, if we're looking at drainage and roads and everything, Mr. Greenhouse, is the fact that, it's different departments, right? You got drainage districts and you got road, DPW and that kind of stuff. So you'd have to, because it's separate entities, we'd have to,
Have to break the
Separate the
millage up.
funds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, break the millage up. We need
So-
3 here and 1 there, or
It's a
2
little,
and 1.
it's a little different ordinance. Same framework, same intention, same everything. It's just how you word it, how you put it together, and how you distribute it would be a little different.
Okay.
I understand. Me personally, I tell you, my thoughts on this would be more, I would lean more toward the drainage aspect as it relates to the retention ponds, and if it's open ditches or I can't think what the other one's called, subsurface
Yeah.
maintenance of those things, of those nature. I would want the majority of it to go, you don't want to overburden someone, but I would like the majority of that to go toward the drainage aspect of it.
Well,
And-
even rear, if you're looking at drainage and what has to be maintained within a subdivision, you're looking at rear yard swells, where the drainage district a lot of time has to go in there and maintain those kind of things. You're looking at
Yes.
ponds, you're looking at outfall structures that might fail or have problems later on down the line. So all those things would want to be, make sure you encompass everything where you're looking at.
Absolutely. And that way you
Yeah,
can have
have it
unfettered
written.
access to it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times, I know that in Gravity 5, and I'm sure it's the same in Gravity 1 and Gravity 2, you were in a situation where you can't actually get access to the retention pond because, one, it's privately owned, and so you have citizens there that pay, but you can't actually get to it. And even if you could, you have fences in the way and things of those nature to where you can't actually do it. This is the kind of things that we want to see come to an end. At least I believe it's going to be best. You get the drainage right in that area and you keep it right that way, then it'll stay that way.
Well, some of that would be
Oh,
definitely frontage requirements.
Yes.
On the public right of ways, things like that. If, go along with the maintenance of the detention ponds and so forth, where make sure you get equipment in. So
You
there might
do
be
that-
some of the subdivision regulations come into play as well, so.
Well, and you in that nature, that would be like typically a separate ordinance. You put
Yeah,
those
I'm
ordinances in
just-
place, you put this in place, and then you kind of have you have access and you have funds available. And to clarify too, this is for future development. So,
Yeah.
but maybe there's a point where we could work on things that exist. But obviously you'd have to have everybody in there involved, willing to do it.
Funny you say that. I was going through a bunch of old emails last night. I got one. I found one from Angie because I had brought up to her. I said I need some information from surrounding parishes on these. Remember, I was trying to get us to do something with retention and detention ponds, and it actually said in Ascension that I forget what exactly the wording was, but it said that if your detention pond is having a problem and it's causing upstream or downstream, that you can go in and force the landowner to fix it.
That should be that's basically anywhere in the
But
state.
we don't have that written.
You don't have written, but it's basically a state statute.
Yeah, and because that's what I was, and then that way, and if they said, no, we're not fixing it, then the parish would fix it plus 25%. They'd bill them 25% over whatever it cost them to fix it. And so that made the landowner go, well, I'm gonna get somebody to go fix this,
Yeah. Well, and the good thing about this right here, as far as development going forward, would
Yeah, if you
eliminate
get it.
that.
Yeah, 'cause
Plus,
you get it all in
You would
place.
you would have very good access. You wouldn't have to be able to you wouldn't have to dodge things like fences.
Right.
Or, and a lot of people
and
put
the-
fences up and don't know.
Well, the whole
you know?
parish is getting much better on letting people know where they can. Now, we had talked about permits for fencing, and that never went anywhere. And that would have eliminated a lot of the issues, whether it be permitting or somebody marking and telling them, you can't put it past here,
Well, at the same time, though, those same people would have to know that you actually had to have a permit to
I
put a
know.
fence up.
That's right. It's like anything else.
And it's not necessarily somebody willfully breaking the law. They just
No,
don't
no,
realize
yeah.
that they can't put a fence up on their own yard
Yeah,
without a permit.
on this, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And the whole concept behind permitting really isn't to make money. It's to make sure things are done right.
No, well, I had even
Yeah.
said not charge for that permit,
Yeah.
but you gotta send somebody out, not necessarily a survey crew, but someone would have to go out and mark this, whether it be the gravity drainage districts or someone else. And Gravity One, I'd talked to them, and they were like, Wesley was like, yeah, we would love to go out and mark and tell them where to put their fence. You know,
Yeah.
because then we don't run into the issue of, oh, we got to tear your fence down,
Yeah.
you know?
And then you don't have to get into the back and forth argument of, well, this is my property. I mean,
I know,
technically
I know.
you own, it's your property. You own the ditch, but it's not your ditch, I mean, your property goes to the road,
But, yeah.
but, you don't have,
Anyhow,
so.
so I think, is there anything else we need to know on that? I mean, I had talked to you a little bit about it
Well,
a year ago.
I think the thing about it also is basically narrow down exactly what y'all want to be able to do with the ordinance. Lay it out. We need to talk to the legislator, probably, of course, Mr. Moody, about the options, if you have to give people options or not. And I think the other thing would be, as to go along with this ordinance, subdivision ordinances will have to change as well to make sure, if you're gonna have to do it, because you're looking at an ordinance that you have to pass
Sure.
prior to the final plat, so that needs to be written, so it'll basically be several changes going through. But, I do think that, knowing exactly what needs to be included, where you can put formulas in, figure out your millage.
Yeah.
Right up front, based on where nobody can come back and say, well, you didn't treat me right here, no. Here's your
Yeah,
acreage
you
of
fell
your
in the
pond.
formula.
Here's your acreage of your pond. This is what this is what we think it's gonna be for maintenance through a year, da-da-da, and then you back into your millage.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think that all kind of works back
Yeah,
out.
because you don't want to collect any more than you need to.
Correct, but you
Yeah.
also want to make sure that.
You have enough.
You have some reserve where if you do have a catastrophic
Collapse
failure,
or, yeah.
Yeah.
slope failure, erosion, or some repair that has to be done, that there is money there to do that.
Okay.
And I believe that,
Yeah, I think-
obviously ours isn't going to be isn't going to be written like this.
Right.
But this is a very good framework to
I
go
agree.
from.
We'll
And,
have to comb through it page by page and
Yeah.
sentence by sentence and see what doesn't,
And I guess from what I understand, what you're saying, Mr. Murphy, is by and large, most developers would want to do that, right? I mean,
They'd rather do that than have a private street, yes, or
Yeah.
private facilities, because who wants to have to worry about that with a homeowners association and so forth? And
Well-
you're looking at the millage, and Melissa probably knows more about this than me, but based on how that millage affects sales and so forth, at 5 mills, or 7.5. I haven't seen any of them in Ascension over 10. It's usually 5, 7.5, somewhere up in there. This is a very small community, this one, and 7.5. It's normally around 5 mills. So everybody
Gotcha.
pay for that. So I don't know exactly how that affects home sales and stuff, but basically, bottom line is, it's something that the homeowner pays. It comes yearly. You know what I'm saying? It's just
Yeah.
kind of built in, and so it's not like an extra fee that they think they have to pay.
well, and they went into it knowing.
Correct.
So it's not like you're
And then
going to
it-
your average citizen and going, hey, you got to start paying this.
So also on the final plat, we have to put notes in order to reference the ordinance and that kind of stuff, to where, buyer beware kind of note, not like but just a note saying, hey, this is subject to an infrastructure district.
special assessment district, yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually on
I
the
think
final
the
plat.
peace of mind, if I was buying in it, would be
I agree.
to know that the roads and drainage and the ponds are all gonna be, and
Yeah.
if we do roads, but it would make me feel like, well, for a small fee, I'm gonna know that my district is, that I live in, my development is handled,
Yeah. Plus, if you, like you said, if you
If we
did
did
roads,
roads, yeah.
if you did roads, if you could cover a good percentage of it before you ever went to the overlay,
right?
I mean, I got to believe that
It
would
would
ring,
move
that
up.
would ring well for you in the assessment of when it gets overlaid.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Anyway.
I agree.
Look,
Okay.
and the paperwork, the petition to create, it's pretty simple. They left it real simple. It's not like it's an elaborate form. We give them, 6 items: linear footage of road, how many this, how many that, and that's what they use in order to go forward. So it's a pretty simple form to fill out. Got a process, just like a standard ordinance process that you do with any other ordinance that you pass.
Okay.
And it'd be done every time, they just come before you.
All right.
yeah, I like it.
I mean,
You got anything,
Things,
Gary?
our world has changed.
Yeah.
You know, so we need to do things a little differently.
Well, and
It gives them the opportunity.
it does, and it just creates a way of source of revenue that, that,
It's from the development.
yeah, and from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I'm like you. If I moved into like a subdivision and I bought a brand new home, I would pay that little bit more to know that I'm not gonna have to be fighting someone to come clean the retention pond.
Sure. Yeah.
When it gets to that
Our
point,
retention
it'll
pond's
just
all
come out and
grown
do
up. It's
it.
got trees growing all in it. Well, you're the HOA. You're supposed to take care of that.
And,
that doesn't work.
And
Yeah.
I
That doesn't
have
work.
zero faith in HOAs.
Yep.
And
I get you.
and we shouldn't put that kind of like drainage is a utility.
Yeah.
Probably more in this parish than most. It's utility, so it needs to be managed like one. And
needs to
just
be a
because
parish
it's not
function.
draining here in this, it's accumulative. So if you have a development that has a bad retention pond, the water's got to go somewhere. So then it affects the development downstream and upstream.
upstream, yeah.
So
Okay.
anyway, that's it. That's you. I
Appreciate
appreciate it,
it,
Mr.
Derek.
Murphy. Thank you.
Well, look, if y'all got any other questions,
All right, thank you both.
Oh, we'll have plenty. Don't worry.
Okay.
All right. Where we at?
Item B, review load limits of parish road ordinance. This is something we've been looking at for quite a while, but I think we're kind of waiting for some response from DPW or administration on exactly what they wanted. I know that the old ordinance said that there's a load limit of 10,000 pounds on the parish road and highways, and then it goes more, it says limit of 5 tons per axle, and then 5, 10, or 20. I'm looking to this here.
I just sent y'all the state regs. Look on your text message. I just sent everybody what the state regulations are.
All right,
Huh?
page 3.
A says generally there's a hereby established a low limit of 10,000 pounds on the parish road and highways. And if you go to, and since we send to connect to state highways, if you go to the state gives you a single axle truck, they give you 20,000 on the rear axle. And then the front axle is based on tire width. So they give you 650 pounds per tire inch. So if you got an 8-inch tire, so you got 16 inches times 650 pounds, which gives you the front axle weight. And that's the limit, so because basically the roads are established based on, a particular, you can't just set a weight limit. You can set a max weight limit, 80,000 pounds, but you've got to get to that by a combination of things. So if you follow these guidelines, and each individual truck's got its own weight limit based on whether it's a tandem axle, a triaxle, quad, depending on what they're running. And then, but it doesn't matter what you run, the max is 80, based on distribution of weight. So that's on the interstate system. Now, the state highway allows you to go to 88,000 or 8350, depending on, extra axles. I would suspect that we probably ought to adopt the interstate system is the weight limit deal. And then go through and start figuring out what roads need to be exempted, what roads need to be taken off. If we need to modify or make them no truck routes, we need to go back and do it. So I don't think we're ready to do that today because, I don't know if some of these roads, like Perkins Road from Arnold to
Brand new.
1019, it's brand new. So,
And it was supposed to be built 10 inches and 3 inches.
well, so the question is, why is there a 5-ton per axle limit on it?
Well,
Is
because it was old beat up.
Well, I
road.
understand.
Now
So
it's
we
not.
need to we need to figure out what roads need to be limited
Yeah.
and what roads don't. The concern I have is that we're looking more to protect new roads than we are old roads, and I'm just wondering if the new roads need to be protected, did we not build them up to a good standard? So
I think
that's the
we did.
concern.
I think we
But I think we got to figure out what roads I mean, DPW needs to give us some input on what roads they think need to be limited, or what roads need to be
Yeah,
no
because
truck routes,
I
or
don't think
whatever.
this, no truck route on all parish roads would work very
No,
well.
no.
I mean, we got a truck parish, you
But we
know?
gotta figure out, we need to figure out, you know, and then we need to establish weight limits. And I think the weight limits ought to match the state
State-
highway.
Well,
and
just by reading that, I don't know what parish would know
Yeah.
trucks on, in, you know,
then
I
the
think
Parish
that's a,
roads are connectors, I guess they gotta be.
yeah.
And this doesn't apply to local delivery anyhow, right? I mean, you can't tell somebody they can't go deliver stuff down the road.
Well, I mean, it doesn't clarify that it doesn't.
Pay taxes too.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah.
And we need to look at their
A lot
bridges,
of-
that we've got a whole list of bridges that have got weight limits established on them. Well, ain't no need, if.
That would dictate.
Ain't no
Yep.
need to- ain't no need to have overweight on the road if you're not gonna, if you can get to the bridge and make them turn around, so.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, so that, I think we need to figure out, you know, I think DPW needs to give us some guidance on the roads that they want on this deal, but I don't see, do y'all, for the purposes of discussion, do y'all have a problem with the state load limits?
I don't think so. Those look like, I mean, they established those for a reason.
I mean, you could do state load limits with exceptions. if
Well, that's
you-
what, that's
we
what.
can always-
I think
Yeah.
that's
that's
what we're
what he's
saying. I
saying,
think
yeah.
that generally, we'd use a state grid, the state guidelines on loads, and then come down, if we wanna start limiting roads to 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever, we can come down through and make the list. But I think DPW needs to give us that guidance and tell us what roads need to be limited.
Got that?
Yeah, I agree.
Is there any kind of specs on the road when it's built?
I mean-
Put out a bid package, is there any?
Yeah, I think that,
Gotta be compacted,
they're
such and
supposed to be
such,
built
10
to the new
inch.
standard.
Yeah.
All roads are supposed to be built to the new standard, and
Some type of weight limit,
you would think,
gotta be built.
How you figure that, Derek?
It's axles per day, easels.
Same thing.
Same kind of thing, so it's a matter of, I don't know what the 3/10 is off the top of my head, but it's basically how many axles we can handle in a given day, wherever.
Yeah, but I mean, with our 10 inches of subbase at a certain amount of Portland, whatever, and then 3 inches, that should be able to be figured what it should hold.
Yeah, you can get your structural number from that,
Okay?
I just don't know what it is. off
Well,
the
the
top of my head.
review engineer ought to be able to figure that up, huh? Okay, we need to get Morgan to tell us what that would be.
Yep.
Yeah, and then that gives us a guide. If we're not building to a standard to hold to the state limit, maybe we need to change that ordinance again.
okay.
But you
Yeah.
can also do it for, let's say you got some older roads still out there, you got a road that's not worth, you can also figure out what your structural number is for each one of those type of.
Yeah, and then we could make the adjustment. I mean, that's what we're
Well, I
talking about.
Yeah, just do-
understand the whole concern with the new roads that we're overlaying. We don't want them to last 2 or 3 years and then they're torn up. But if we're not building them heavy-duty enough to hold up to what our people use them for, then we need to look at changing that. And if we gotta do fewer miles to get them to a higher level, then that's what we'll have to do.
But when you look at a standard subdivision, what goes on a standard subdivision, the road takes all the traffic to build it, takes all the traffic to build the houses, takes all the traffic, garbage truck after that. I mean, it's not constant 18-wheeler pounding after that initial period, but for that initial period.
It gets a lot of wear.
It's coming in, there's probably more, coming in that timeframe.
And you know,
For certain.
and you know some of those, I mean, concrete truck, them suckers, they well over 80,000 pounds.
So
Yeah.
those are on your roads, but they're also on the subdivision, which is the same 3/10.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
But we need to look at that. And if Morgan can give us a figure on what it will support now with the 3010,
Well, I suspect that we're probably gonna have to get the engineers that are part of the road program to do that.
well, that's,
we gotta
but
get-
she can
Yeah.
get it for us, yeah.
All right. Anything else?
That's all we have.
All right. No. Item C,
Where's that at?
review regulation prohibiting parking vehicles, trailers on parish roads. Now, I think
This is part of the same ordinance, and I think we've kind of got the stuff together. If you'll look on, I think we determined that if you go to 46, 89 being the first and 4690 being the second, all we just do is add or trailer. And then on 4692,
Okay,
we add or trailer. In 4693, we add or trailer. Even though the definition of a vehicle includes a trailer, I think for clarification, if we add or trailer, we'll solve the problem.
all right.
I'd like to offer those changes as a motion to be introduced.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Towers,
Thursday
second by
night.
Mr. King.
Okay,
And so this addressed all of your concerns we had prior to this.
All the
about-
concerns were on the trailers. The concerns were trailers being parked on the roads. That's
Yes.
what, that's
we
what
already
they
had
were.
the other in place, but
And so all we're doing is, the definition of a vehicle includes a trailer, however, there was some discrepancy on whether enforcement, so we're just gonna go add trailer to vehicle. And then everywhere it talks about a vehicle that can't be parked on the road, now it says a vehicle and a trailer.
Okay.
what if
Which will
it's-
solve- which will solve
What if
the-
it's just a trailer,
It
No.
says vehicle or trailer.
our trailer?
It says
trailer.
or.
All right.
It doesn't say and, it says or.
I like
Yeah.
it.
So that, those, we implement, we input or trailer at all those spots. I think
And
we'll
that'll
resolve
cover it.
whatever concern
Okay.
that the sheriff's department.
Yeah,
I
that's-
think it came from
It
from
did.
Jeff through the sheriff's
Yep.
office. so-
Yes.
Or from the sheriff's office to
No,
Jeff.
it- actually, I think Kane, I don't think Jeff is just, they
It might be.
called me on me. It was
Okay,
actually-
you,
And look,
whatever, I
and-
mean, just.
And that's okay, and I just, and to reiterate my point on that, but in some of these subdivisions, you know, people are parking, they were parking their vehicles down there, they're parking the trailers in the road. It creates visual obstructions, so where people, you can't see, it's really tight up in there, you can't see if kids riding bikes come running out from behind this trailer. And it also creates an obstruction for emergency vehicles, be it a fire truck or an ambulance or just general traffic. So we got a motion and a second on this one?
Yeah.
Okay. You gave the motion, Mr. Tyler?
My motion, Scooter second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Let me find my page. I think I flipped around here. Here we go. It was A, B, C.
New businesses.
Yep.
And since,
New business, review, discussion, recommendation, ordinance, and master plan review committee. And that was actually gonna be some good information, but, Mr. Burns was gonna present, but
Yeah.
he had a scheduling conflict because he actually has a master plan committee
Tonight.
meeting tonight. So, we're gonna defer that until our next ordinance committee meetings where he'll come back and discuss with us
Okay, I
then,
got
so.
one thing I want to put under new business.
Okay.
And I've discussed this with a few of you fellows before. A lot of people are living in travel trailers in our parish now illegally. The parish has started through compliance, going and making these people move out. I got an 80-year-old lady in my district that lives behind her son's trailer. And I've talked to Mr. Sam about this, and he wants me to get a couple of councilmen and come and sit down with permitting. Because this is not gonna go away. There's a lot of people that are hurting from 16 to the Ida. And figure out a way to permit travel trailers for use to live in. If they have their own pole hooked into city, to sewage. Because right now, some of them are just running a straight pipe into our ditches with raw sewage. Because there's no way for them to be legal. It may not fly, but it's something that we need to look at doing, whatever way we have to do.
okay, so you want to permit a travel trailer, but you're gonna make them permit it in such a manner that they've got to have their own meter pole and a
And
sewer
a sewer
treatment
treat-
plant or whatever.
Or whatever, or if and I know DHH, they don't want to let them tie into the existing that's big enough to
Well,
handle
look,
it.
let me just tell you.
How can they
I-
determine that?
I have a travel trailer set up on a piece of property that I bought that we remodeled the house. Not because I'd have to live there, but
In case.
there on occasion
Yeah.
that, whatever, you've had to stay there. Okay, but I've also got a porta potty there that gets sucked out every week.
Right.
So consequently, when that guy comes and sucks, he hooks to the travel trailer every
And
week.
empties it.
And empties it. It might not even got used.
But he checks it,
Right, and it's, nobody's living there.
right.
Yeah, there is a time when it needs to be available, but I don't know how to.
Well, that's why Mr. Sam wanted me to get a couple guys together, sit down with permitting in his office in a week or so. Because it's happening. I've got 5 new ones in the last 3 weeks and on my road that have built porches and everything else on them. Okay? on individual pieces of property that actually have septic systems in place.
Well, are they doing that in an interim basis, or is it?
I have no idea.
So-
They don't have to do anything at this moment, but if compliance gets a call, they go and they make them take the trailer and leave. Where are they gonna go?
Well,
I know, and I get it. So,
I mean,
But weren't we attacking this by a case-by-case
Case by
basis?
case, but we
and-
don't know
And giving
about
a
them right now, they
temporary,
do it.
a temporary permit?
yeah, but they don't even know that. So if compliance went somewhere and said, look, we're not gonna make you move it today, but you gotta go get your stuff straight, and we gotta make sure that you're hooked up properly, then at least there's some kind of, requirements to make them where they're safe for the public, safe for the sewage is just not running in the,
So
And-
to clarify, you want to create just something in general to where they can handle, to where everything doesn't have to come to us for a
yeah, they would
waiver
just,
per
it would just
se?
go. Yeah.
so ultimately, you don't, ultimately, the initial reaction is to make them move.
Right.
There's a process.
Process in place,
Understand.
because there's nothing
But
right now.
but we're gonna put a limit on the time.
And we can do that, and if for some reason, look, where we made it 18 months or 2 years or whatever,
Well,
at that time, they would come back and tell us why.
Well, I mean.
Or tell
so
permitting why.
obviously, if you're having a bunch of them come in, that there are people who have properties that were damaged in the last storm, and they're there because they don't have the ability.
And they don't know that they need to do something. So that's
I mean,
just something I want
Yeah, I mean,
we addressed this after
Well,
after
we did
the
after
2016.
the flood, sure.
After the 2016 flood, we just.
But all those
waived-
were
we-
FEMA
wait a
trailers
second.
coming in
We just
most.
waived
Sure.
them for 2 years.
Yeah, period.
We just said for 2 years you can put a trailer on the property. I don't think under this point, what we're talking about here isn't as widespread. It's gonna be a more
Right.
limited deal, so we need to figure out a process.
My mother wants to live in a trailer behind my house, what do I need to do? And right now, they tell them you can't.
Well, and-
So they
and-
hook it up illegally, and
But the issue is, okay, so how long does your mom live?
I don't know.
And if she says forever, so well, that's still not an option. I mean, forever's not an option. So we gotta figure out what is an option, and then how we go about doing that.
And-
Because technically, we follow a particular code, and that particular code is what doesn't allow
Dictates
people.
what-
doesn't
right,
allow
that's
people to
right.
live
I
in travel
understand.
trailers. Am I
Yep.
correct, Jeff?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a building code, and that building code doesn't allow people to live in travel trailers.
Right.
I think the building code allows for like a 6-month
Yeah,
temporary.
during the construction process or whatever, and we could probably stretch that on an emergency basis, but I mean, I'm just saying.
But
that
those things don't
But-
need to come to us. That needs to be handled in permitting, and people need to know, and it's mainly for compliance to be able to,
I guess
tell people.
ideally, when we're using this as an example, your mom needs to live in a travel trailer behind your house. So you permit it for a year, and if it's a
Yeah.
year from now and you get re-permitted. Reason behind that would be because you don't want that travel trailer 15 years from now and your mom and the mother has passed away becoming a rental property.
Well, here's the deal, technically, and tell me if I'm wrong, like in Grand Isle, some in places that have elevation deals. You bring a travel trailer in, every so often, it's gotta leave. Isn't that the way the standard's set up? It's gotta leave that proproperty and then
I
come
think
back,
so.
and it's not, so it's not permanent?
I think so.
That makes it not permanent.
gotta be gone for like 30 days or something.
But anyway, but Ms. White, if you would, look at our current building code or get with Ms. Dee Dee on our current building code and find out what the code that we've adopted to utilize allows for with respect to
Well,
travel trailer. And then report back to us, and then let's figure out what does we can't be in violation of the code that we're saying we're gonna operate
I
under.
agree.
So-
I agree.
So let's figure out what it allows for, and then we'll create a situation that you can get a temporary deal based on what that thing allows for.
Well, this is getting worse and worse, and look, I get it, some people can't afford more than that right now, something happened,
Well, I mean-
But let's try and figure out some way to make it to where the parish lets people know, when they get a call, there's a travel trailer hooked up. They can go out and inspect, tell them what they need to do, instead of going, you got 14 days, you gotta be gone.
Look, I don't
No.
disagree, but I think we need to establish it. So which would then give compliance a leg to stand on when it's time to make a move. And we can establish a permitting process, a time frame, and then when your time frame's up, there's some process. You gotta leave with the trailer for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, and then you can come back and re-permit it, but you gotta follow the process.
Okay,
Well, and I can understand we all of us want to be able to help people in times like this. At the same time, that abuse abuse of that
all the
There are tons.
will inevitably will occur.
Yep.
So I guess we'll come up with something that allows us to help people who need help, but
But at the
also
same
limit
time,
the
trying
amount
to
of
counter
abuse.
some of this, yeah.
So,
And, I mean, I told the
Well-
guys, they called me, I was deer hunting in Colorado, and the man called me and said, they told my mom she's got 14 days. And I said, no, we're gonna work on this. But it's in a trailer park subdivision, so
Okay,
it's
well-
not like,
Well,
You know?
let's figure out what we're doing now and then try
So
to,
let's-
try to create a thing that applies.
so
is
do
not-
we need to have a meeting with Sam and Dee Dee, or just get
I
them to
think-
come
I
to an
think
ordinance
let's- I
meeting?
think let's figure out what we wanna do, and then we can go sit down and meet with them. I mean, those Monday afternoon deals that they got.
Yeah, just at the
Let's
end,
get-
yeah.
Let's get Ms. White to figure out what's there, and then a couple of us can go sit down with him and say, look, this is what we think under our current building guidelines allows
can
us to do.
yeah.
And then see how they feel how they feel that works for them, and we can move forward from that.
Ultimately, we don't want to make things harder for people who are having a hard time, but we don't want the system to be abused either.
And we
And you
don't
know they
pollute
will.
our streams and things with raw sewage and things.
Yes,
You know,
which is part of the abuse.
yeah,
So,
it is.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
I appreciate
else?
you
Did
guys.
you have
Y'all wanna
something?
Y'all want to talk about something? Okay, guys, y'all seen it? Y'all seen it? They think we getting ready to change all the subdivision rules, and we getting all these submittals with, filing 4 through 25.
Yeah, all of them at
No,
one
and they ain't
time.
good and well, that's not how they gonna build them subdivisions. But they getting them in and technically think they're grandfathered. So think about a subdivision submittal. I submit filing 5. The only thing that I'm not definitive on is the size of my retention pond. I got a good idea based on history and what I think, but until I do a drainage impact study, I don't know what kind of retention pond I need. We currently have a variation of, Derek, 5%, 10%, what's a 5% for resubmittal?
It's 10.
10.
10% for resubmittal? I mean, I think that's kind of excessive, given we've seen happen.
And what's gonna be going
And
on?
what's gonna be going on, we're gonna end up with subdivision files, 8 inches thick with all the revisions in them. So, I think in an effort to curb this, I think we need to limit what can be modified in a subdivision plan that's originally submitted without, I'm not saying you gotta come back through planning, I'm just saying that the rules change. Meaning that if you've submitted under the current guidelines now, right? So you're technically grandfathered in. But if you modify anything in them plans other than the drainage impact on it, then you follow the new rules. When the new rules are adopted. Now, I'm not saying the new rules are ever gonna get adopted. I don't know what's gonna happen. But if we create new rules and you modify that plan other than what's not known, which is the retention pond and the outfall and that kind of stuff, then you change, then the rules change. Look, we've got guys will start building a subdivision, and this developer comes to them and says, I want to buy your subdivision, but I need the lots to be 2 foot narrower. Well, guess what? When you modify that subdivision with 2 foot narrow lots, you follow the new guidelines.
I think that's in there now.
Nope. If it's less than 10%
If it's less
variance,
than
you don't have to
10%.
come back and you
So
still
we,
grandfather
you
in.
wanna change it to any change, you gotta follow.
I just think if you go past the drainage and you redesign, it's basically redesign a subdivision.
I guess my question would be, what if it's on the offhand, like a change to the positive?
I think
in
it's a
that, in
good
respect,
direction.
We're gonna make
respect,
the
we're
lots
like
bigger?
with, Mr. Murphy, that development y'all did, y'all actually came back and wanted to change, but you'd actually reduced the amount of lots in the neighborhood. I mean, I was
Great.
actually okay with that. I'm not going to hang you out for making the situation better.
But they could look at that and go, no,
Well, I mean, I just look, we got
I mean-
and look, we can reduce, I'm not saying that no change. I'm just saying that this 10% change thing that we've got, that's, you do 10% of filing on this thing, it's a big difference than what you originally submitted. And you just wag something to begin with, so you think you're beating a set of guidelines that might change. I mean, that's all I'm saying. I mean, I just think that what we're gonna end up with is, we're gonna get this modification, that modification, that modification. how do we calculate 10%? What is a 10% calculation? Is it strictly based on lot number? You know, so, I mean, I just think
And
that,
I understand what you're saying.
I
mean,
just think that,
do.
well, because we're gonna
They buying up
continue,
every piece of land in Livingston Parish right now.
Yep.
and they're trying to make they're making these huge submittals, thinking they're gonna, you know, that we're gonna reduce the outfall or route flow, or we wanna, you know, whatever. But we talked about particular options. You wanna come comment
Yeah,
from a drainage engineer on one hand and the guy that's working for the developer on the other hand. Go ahead and get your hand out there and figure this out.
What I was gonna say is,
And and just for clarity, I didn't know that this was gonna be
Yeah,
thrown
no
on you when I
problem.
invited you tonight.
no problem. But,
No, I mean,
now what you could do is, in a lot of parishes, what they do is come up with a minor and a major change. And that minor change is stuff that can be done at staff level that doesn't require you to do new codes, go through that whole system again. Major change, they're specified, you know, like in Ascension is, if you change the location of a treatment plant, you gotta come back in front of them because you may be affecting a neighbor with sewer treatment. You know, if you change the road network, you have to come back. So they're specific on what those changes are, minor and major. That would be the only way I would know that you could do that, where that would kick it back. Because technically, once those things, right now, the way the ordinance is written, as grandfathered, it's locked in. The only way I would think is, because you can't just say 10% or just anything other than the drainage, but if you start getting into mind, like, look, if we just do this, it's not a big deal, but if you changing streets or changing a connection or where the streets are coming out at on the road, things like that, that becomes a major change. And so if y'all start looking at those kind of things, that could be what you're trying to think about.
Okay. Well, so Ascension's got a list of minor and major. You got any other parishes we can look at?
I think Baton Rouge, I think just about most of them got it.
Okay. All right.
But that would be if that's what you're trying to do, that would be the
Probably
avenue.
accomplish
So basically, if we could trigger, if a major change happens, that we could trigger coming back through and following.
With the new
and then
guidelines.
meet
And
some
look,
of the-
it could be, if y'all didn't want to come back all the way through planning and council, you can even have an intermediate maybe where you just have where, look, this requires coming back to council, this requires staff level and new rules, and then this doesn't require anything, right? So you can do triple or something like that. I'm just,
I mean, but it's just an effort to curb
Sure.
some of these submittals that are ridiculous.
But the ones that have already been submitted.
Yeah, they're submitted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
we can't go.
I mean, I'm just like, because then
I
your
mean, I'm
grandfather
I'm
didn't.
You
seeing
gotta
what
go
you're
by the
seeing,
rules,
6
right?
through 9 and 6 through 94.
We've seen some submittals. Now, the 2-year thing's gonna kick in on them anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, the 2-year deal's gonna kick, at 2 years when something's approved, at 2 years, it's gotta be resubmitted.
That has not been being adhered to.
No, it's
And
written
we
in
need
the
to-
ordinance.
We need to make sure that's happening, because they'll
Well,
go,
Written in
but
the ordinance
somebody,
at 2 years,
but
the
he
thing's gotta
tried
go
to
back through
do,
planning again.
Well,
we had one in yours that,
No,
remember,
but-
but it was different.
but it would that, and look, I'm with you, because I'm not about,
No, that's
Yeah.
right, that was
yeah,
different. Yeah.
I'm not trying to cut all those breaks for any reason, but I mean, that guy ran into roadblock after
Absolutely.
roadblock.
Well, yeah,
That
I
was
mean,
not his fault.
And we
Yeah.
can always look at that and go, yes.
Yeah,
that's-
which is what we did.
We did, yeah.
So
That's why we're here, for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
that was one where you got caught, you know, and that happens. That's why.
And it doesn't
that's
happen
why-
often though, so it doesn't come into play I think that's 1 in 6 years that we've had
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Hey, look,
I agree.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Nobody-
All right,
Second.
motion by Mr. Sauer, second by Mr. Keene. All in favor, say aye.
You need
Meeting
these back?